to Soullab, everyone. I'm Kelly Nazant, and today we are having our very first podcast interview with Jondi Whitis. The area we're covering is the fire element. Now, as many of you know, the fire element represents spiritual development, intuition, the hero awakening, and creating in the world and finding incredible reasons for being in the world and being a part of the world, as well as finding rituals that bring one to a higher state of consciousness, to a higher state of being. And Jondi Whitis embodies so much of this. Her work with tapping, or EFT, or emotional freedom technique, has led her down a road of healing that in many ways has surpassed EFT. She has brought EFT into an arena that encompasses so much more, and which is probably the goal of all good practices. And she is bringing out a wonderful program for children called Tapping Star. If you go to tappingstar.com, you'll see an amazing offering that is indicating a focus for her that is looking at empowering and supporting our children to come back in resonance, to come back in emotional connection, and to find their center, their point of coherence. And you'll notice in this interview so many amazing insights that are for us that are seasoned and been in our professions for quite a long time, and those that are breaking into the healing professions and understanding how to be in service, how to be with your clients in a good way, and how to understand the energetic healing and how it fits in with the healing process itself. Jondi Whitis will lead us through this amazing insight into the energetic expressions of healing and wellness. So enjoy this interview. I certainly did. We're definitely going to have a deeper dive on our Patreon site, patreon.com/Soullab. So if you enjoy this interview, which I know you will, then at the end, go to the deep dive on Patreon, and we are going to go deeper into energy healing, wellness, the practice, the business, all of it. Jondi Whitis is an amazing communicator. She has a background in TV and film production, communication. She is a wordsmith. So with no further ado, we go to the interview now. Welcome, Jondi, to Soullab's first podcast.
Well, it's a privilege. It really is. And I feel very, very fine to be here.
Thank you. You know, one of the things that I'm very excited about, we start, as you know, in the fire realm. And the fire realm symbolically is, they say it in terms of the spiritual realm, the spiritual part of our nature. And what I like about that is it's easy to get these misunderstandings of, or sort of short ideas of what spirituality is. But in these terms, spirituality is really about this inspiritedness, this fiery nature of ours to come into the world, to create, to be on fire, to bring something into the world, to create ritual and to grow spiritually and develop with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And also it's energetic and it's playful and creative and all of these things that you personify so wonderfully in your practice. So you're absolutely the perfect person to start with.
Thank you. Well, that's making me blush.
We are focusing today on EFT. Can you give a little bit of an insight for those who don't know what EFT is? Just an intro.
I'd be delighted. And you know, I change this answer every time somebody asks me, but I'm used to it because it's relatively new as a modality, 20 plus years. But it stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And yes, that's plural. And that's because it is a collection of things that was derived from TFT, thought field therapy, in the 80s by Dr. Roger Callahan. EFT is a much smaller, reverse-engineered, elegant version by Gary Craig in the 90s. And that history done, what is it? It is a modality. It is a protocol. It is very simply elegant structure for which we can encounter truth-telling, right, with specificity, brief exposure, mindfulness, and then we use acupressure stimulation or the meridian system of points stimulation. So it's sort of 5 things to me that are all dynamically interacting at all times. Okay. Frankly, I think we'll all get to this place though when we look at EFT, use EFT, and experience EFT. It is a lens through which we can see the world differently.
Beautifully said. I found the EFT, I think through Gary Craig, started training in it maybe 13, 14 years ago. And it's one of those tools that I have, one of those resources that I have that make me look rather magical, right?
And what's wrong with that, Kelly?
There is nothing in the world, but it is a very interesting thing. It's one of those, I love doing it with clients for the first time because there's this induction that occurs, right? This, how did that happen? Where did the depression go? Where did the pain go?
It's gobsmackery.
I love that, gobsmackery. So you've been doing it now for how many years?
Probably about 14, 15 years. I'm not exactly sure. It kind of crept into my life and took up residence.
Now, you come from a background of TV and film production and that sort of thing. What's the connection? Is there a connection?
I don't think there was a deliberate connection because I think I ran away from psych school screaming. It took me a long time to come back around to the intention of that rather than the perhaps training of that. But I've found since that it wasn't intentional, but it was somehow soul-oriented because it is about communication. So that showbiz, if you want, that particular thing that we call the entertainment world is really about telling stories. Right? It's about communicating to people. And yes, it is advertiser driven in many ways, but that's another day and another conversation. Really, that idea was about communicating. And when we are making, when we're in our creative energy, making entertainment, it is a collaborative function at best, a collaboration of creativity, of intention and purpose and time bending. But it is also about communicating to one another interpersonally in service of this big picture item that we're working on. And so it took a while before I saw that and went, well, heck, that's what we're doing when we're using that with our clients, really. Yeah. We are focused upon doing this collaborative creation together for this higher purpose. And we're communicating with each other, and we're helping that communication rise, expand. And I don't want to get lofty, but I do think we're transcending just the everyday word and verbiage of what's going on because we are entraining each other in this creative energy towards this thing. And let's call it healing.
In service to healing. What does healing look like to you? What would, in this sense of transcending in this dialectic sort of way, what is that to you? I've seen it in my work, and certainly in EFT, you see it because it's so condensed and it's so immediate.
Yes, it is rather
transverbal, right?
Well, I'll give you another trans word. It's what the healing looks and feels like and thinks like is transformation. And that can happen in very subtle and nuanced ways. It can be very gobsmackery. It can just, boom, occur to them in epiphany. Oh my gosh. Right? But all of those I put into that healing category. Are we healing the body? Are we healing the thought? Are we healing the heart? Are we healing the perception? Are we healing the event? What are we doing? And in EFT, all those things are equally and always possible. So it feels like a transformation. It may look like the eyes expand, if you're really very visual, and a lot of us are. It may sound differently. Suddenly, the syntax of that person has completely changed. Their vocabulary is changing. Their pacing is changing. It might be very analytical and cognitive. Oh my goodness, listen to all those perceptual shifts, just like waterfalls coming as they connect and get in touch with what might be more true now that this is examined in safety.
Wow. Wow. One of the things about fire is we talk about it as the intuitive realm. And I remember in grad school, my professor asking me when I talked about intuition, he said, "What do you think intuition is?" And I said, well, it's being present in a moment and receiving all of this data that's coming from all of these modalities, mind, body, spirit, emotions. It's all being brought together, and it accumulates and it manifests as this intuitive sensibility.
Yeah.
So you have this background of acute awareness of language and moods and movements with TV production, and that really serves you with the work you're doing now.
I think that's true. I think I understood from a strange, unintentional childhood biblical perspective the idea that the world was spoken into existence always stayed with me. I couldn't understand it, but on some level I went, wow, I got it on some level. And so taking that forward many, many, many moons later, through communication, the idea that words carry vibratory information, frequency, intention, purpose, all those things, if you use them consciously, is just amazing to me and wonderful. So I love them. Words to me are highly, highly creative vehicles for communicating what is. When you have that ability to talk to someone, to meet them there and share, interchange this energy, it's fantastic. And all the conversations that I've had with you end up being like this, Kelly, because I find a willing conduit that is ready and open and receiving, so that it goes back and forth. So we do this little infinity loop before us with these vibrations that carry much more than the Oxford Dictionary meaning of that word.
Wow. Energy, fire also representing the energetic yogi, the part of us that receives and understands the world as a field of energetic expression that takes a denser or finer form, and the dance between the manifest, the unmanifest, the energetic expression.
Absolutely. And so what you're bringing up, and I don't think a lot of EFTers think this way, by the way, I'm just saying to your audience, because it's a modality, right? But it's in service of, and that's really kind of what we're talking about on Soullab. It's in service of something bigger than a structure or a modality. But what I think we're talking about is energy knows energy. Like attracts like. But in the astral version of this, I mean, that's the biggest thing I can think of, the universal way of this, energy understands energy, seeks like, right? So if it's a frequency wave or it's a personality, it's an intention that's been set and traveling forward like a wave form, all of those things are inherent in what we're talking. So this fire energy, to me, just like highly creative, almost like you're throwing out a big roll of rug in front of you and it just boing, boing, boing like that. And it's seeking another energy. Otherwise, after a while, it will, decay and drop off. And I don't know what happens then, but it's far less energetic. Yeah, it's far less energetic.
I think a lot of us are finding that. In fact, I know I've been in private practice for over 30 years, and having one-on-one practice for all this time has really served me well. I've learned so much about myself, about the human condition, about the magic of transformation and what can happen. The constant surprise that comes with these insights from arenas that I would have never guessed, that make transformational opportunities that I never could have conceived of. All of these possibilities are constantly there. There's always this constant surprise there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do think that's the gift. 30 years of doing the same thing would no doubt have bored you to tears. Right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
the curiosity or the wonder or the newness of that constant reinvention possibility, I think that's what keeps it fresh and discovery alive.
Now, has there, for me personally, there's been this, getting back to what you were saying earlier, there is this awareness of the need for that one-on-one. It's incredible, but then there seems to be more of this collective intelligence coming forward, where many of us that were fine with the one-on-one are beginning to recognize, not just to do seminars or big workshop series, but to really tap into this dynamic, intelligent field of collective peers.
Yeah.
Are you finding that yourself, and where you are with your practice?
Well, I think I do more than the next guy, probably because I am a trainer. I apologize for that. Because I am a trainer, I am frequently in groups. Because I am a mentor, I am frequently in groups. So it's not just one-on-one. And so I guess I'm saying I feel privileged to see that in different guises, that energy being put into different frameworks. So yeah, I think I see a lot of that. And the dynamic collective, to me, that's really about intention and like-mindedness. For instance, you have a group that has the intention to be together, that has an intention to enjoy this weekend, this ceremony, this ritual, this group, whatever it is. But then I think that within that, we're also seeking to connect. It's that energy seeking to connect. And it may not connect the whole group in the same way, but that actually isn't a requirement unless you make it one. Right? You are seeking like-mindedness to be every day about it.
Yeah.
But energetically, I am seeking the match, or I am seeking the kind of match that makes the fire go whoop.
That
right?
Dynamic resonance.
I like that. I like that very much. So yeah, I do notice that a lot, but I think it's just because I've privileged myself into this model where I get to see that a lot. And I'm laughing to myself because a long time ago I used to be in marketing research. So I used to be a focus group facilitator. And oh my, that's a very interesting sort of way to find the dynamic of the room collectively can be influenced just by one person with one very resonant or pulling statement. Energetically speaking, the whole room can be dynamically affected by that. So I think I learned that very early on life, and it works both ways though. That's the good news and the bad news.
Wow. So you bring this extraordinary insight, not just into the individual dynamics, but the group dynamics as well. For many of us, this is a new experience. Having that experience with this collective, I wonder if you were to say, what have you noticed is different now than 10, 14 years ago in terms of group dynamics? We talk about less and less people have the time to go to workshops, for instance. We're more apt to be on Zoom than we are in a VFW hall.
And more's the pity, actually, because there is magic in the group dynamic that can be, I just want to say enjoyed, but built upon as well. 14 or 15 years ago, even though I knew the dynamics of group function and facilitation, I don't think that I had the acuity of noticing that I do now. I also train trainers, which is another function entirely. And so I guess I'm just saying I'm more acutely aware of it than I was before, even though I knew the rules of the road. Applying them is different. And now when I do go to these workshops, because I see the value in that that face-to-face, I'm always very aware of how the facilitation is being handled. Is it being handled? Is it being handled well? Is all the energy in the group being acknowledged and worked in such a way that's very conscious? Am I saying that I do that perfectly all the time? Well, heck no. Who would say such a thing? But I do try, and I'm very, very aware of it. And I think that I've become very much more artful than I was almost 2 decades ago in handling groups for that reason. It's a harnessed compassion to a very acute noticing.
So if you were to look at yourself in this role, would this be what really fires you up about being in that context?
I do think so. It suits me perfectly to be in my fire and have them get really combustible. And I mean that in a good way, of course. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with populations that have lived a lot of them having maybe not resolved some of their stuff makes them highly combustible in a negative way, meaning it's going to have to be handled, it's going to come out, it has to be managed. But the good way is what fires me up. The good way is I do want to catch your curiosity on fire about what is possible for you and what may be possible for those you serve. And if I can attract that attention and allow you to taste that or experience that, then we're home free. Then it's just a matter of keep stoking the fire forward and helping you understand your responsibility in stoking the fire to keep moving that forward, wherever forward is for you.
Whatever forward is.
Yeah.
So you've worked with both trainers and also folks that are new to EFT as well. What are some of the... Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say about 50% of the people I teach are licensed individuals in some kind of health or well care anyway.
Okay.
So EFT is being added to their toolbox. And then the other 50% is all over the spectrum. I've never heard of it. My sister dragged me to, darn it, I'm going to take professional training instead of just zooming around the internet and taking little weekend warrior workshops.
Right. So many people that I've noticed that come to Soullab are on that spectrum, somewhere between having been a professional for a very long time and wanting to diversify and create a more holistic practice. Others are coming into the field, maybe having taken some incredible workshops, but they're looking at how to bring it all together. And I noticed that one of the challenges there is that they don't know how to contextualize it and to approach it with a client. Are you seeing a big difference in the way that you approach them because of that?
Yeah, and that's huge. That's actually a group dynamic that takes a lot of work because you have a mixed bag. Some people will say, this class is only open to licensed healthcare individuals because they actually want a benchmark. They perhaps want the idea that this person is probably safe to operate on the public if they walk out of here and try to do something. Standards. I get it. And I do think they're standards, but I also am aware that they're somewhat standards of convenience.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, it's much more convenient for us to say, oh, I don't need to go through all that because they already know ethics. They already know about safety. They already know how it is to sit across from a client. I don't have to tell them they're going to need to keep up their self-care, that they're going to need to have supervision, and they're going to have to practice this. They know all that. So there's that. But the newbie, my sister dragged me here. They have no idea, typically. What are you talking about? Ethics of what? Self-care because, oh, yeah, I shower, I eat good food, I take care of. Is that what you mean? So you have a huge disconnect potential of information there. But I do notice a lot of what I think you were probably alluding to is that there is a group dynamic that comes to this that is already trained in taking care of people, that is trying to figure out, how do I even talk about this? Because people are coming to me for XYZ. If I start doing EFT versus XYZ, what are they going to think? What are they going to say? Will I lose the client? I don't even know how to explain to them what this is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Context and contextualizing, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
this legitimate concern,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
It is.
That your license, your profession, we're trained very specific modalities. We might know a lot of different theories, a lot of different techniques, from CBT to humanistic work, but in terms of how we practice, there is there's a process that is condoned, that
Mm-hmm.
is well rehearsed and well practiced and well discovered,
And well supervised.
well supervised. Yet there is this desire to embrace, to expand. As I noticed with a lot of my clients going through that are cognitive therapists or clinical therapists, they're wanting to move in that direction, but the challenge really is around, how do I do that in a generative way that I can feel safe with, that
Mm-hmm.
I still feel the context of what I trained in, to be able to expand in that. So would this be some of the things for that grouping that you would spend time with?
Yeah, absolutely. But that is typically going to come out in the process we call mentoring for certification, which is not just a classroom knowledge-based teaching kind of phase. Phase two, for those who wish, is about learning practical application excellence and context and approach,
Okay.
and really getting your hands dirty, right? Trying this out. And that's where we talk about how to language, how to integrate, how to use this in your context. And that's why I love being a mentor, because everybody is different. The person who says, well, I'm just a hairdresser, but people tell me all their problems, right? And
Yeah.
I'd like to really take care of myself, and maybe in the moment it would be really nice to help them feel more calm and at peace. That's a perfectly valid thing for somebody to say, all the way to, I practice 4 different kinds of cognitive behavioral work, and I'm a devotee of this, that, and the other, and I think this would help perhaps the client go deeper, maybe give the client a place to go after into, self-care kind of homework in between sessions. And I'm noticing that some of my colleagues are really getting a lot of good trauma work done, which is to say release. So I'm thinking, what is this? I probably need to add this to my toolbox.
Yeah.
So those are huge ends of the spectrum, but they're equally valid in EFT, which is, I think one of the things that I like best about it is extraordinarily flexible.
Mm-hmm. So become part of your tools to work with them. But we were talking earlier about context, and really a lot of this is, there's something bigger going on than applying technique.
Absolutely, that is it. I mean, I really do think, if at the big picture, what we're up to is connecting and healing, helping the healing process. But as you say, this is what happens routinely in my mentoring with my students, typically one-on-one. I have no idea how I'm going to tell, but Betsy needs this. She needs this. This client of mine, they need this, but I have no idea how to language it, how to approach it. We talk about how to really put their learning, their relationship, and their client together and embrace that, structure that so that it's going to be safe, responsible, contextually appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And we're learning how to pre-frame things. We're learning how it's beyond, what I would say, beyond protocol, perhaps might be the technique application, right? So anybody can teach their toddler how to do very simple tapping, and that's great. But just like everything else that they've probably learned, you can take this to a real surprising depth and breadth dynamic if this is your intention and you are willing to do the work, I guess is the right word for it, to entertain how that integrates, morphs, and grows into its form that is just for this moment.
So is it fair to say that more than wanting to teach a technique, EFT, you're using this EFT to teach something much more dynamic and dare I say, healing?
I do think that's what I'm up to. I didn't know that when I started, though.
Yeah.
I do. And I keep writing on this book that I realize isn't about EFT at all. It is about healing.
Isn't that the wonderful thing about taking these journeys? There's something that compels us. There's this initial fire that, in a certain sense, on the heroic awakening process, it seems very clear. I am this. I am going to be an incredible EFT trainer. But along that journey, there's a calcination, a burning away of maybe what we thought was the real reason, the real intention, or even the real power in this, or the real me in this. And at the end of the day, there's something that rises out of the ashes of these old ways again and again.
Mm-hmm. I do think that's absolutely true. And I don't think it's confined in any way to EFT. I think at its highest levels, all of these things are available for that process of, there's a word for it in metallurgy. What is that word when things are fired?
Calcinatio.
That's a much fancier word than I knew about. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
so tempered. It is tempered.
Aha.
Okay, see, I'm an everyday word person there. I didn't know that big fancy one, but I like it. We are tempered by fire.
Tempered.
Okay, and that gets us back to fire. It is dynamically applied, right?
Dynamic.
For instance, there are certain protocols that do really well in clinical field trial because the structure lends itself to the researcher, which typically might be the grad student, who has a sheet, and they go, all right, please rate on a scale of 1 to 10, because you are looking for less and less variables. You're trying to keep only the variables that you want to look at in check. Of course, you can never do that, but we try to get it down to a subset. EFT and other modalities, it's not just EFT, but taken to their higher tempered realm of creative force and dynamism, is not going to be appropriate for a clinical field trial research because it has nothing to do with staying on track of that and everything to do with the fire realm.
It's very qualitative, which is, of course, in research, very challenging, like phenomenology. It's a very challenging thing to take on because, in the left brain, right brain sort of model, it's very right brain, very feminine, inductive, big, messy, qualitative. It's like, well, how do you quantify a sunrise?
Exactly.
And
to me, that's the bad news for research, and it's the great news for healing.
Yet they've done really important research around EFT and energy healing.
We've even got 3 meta-studies out there. For those listeners, over 100 studies, about 50 of them would be CFTs, randomized controlled CFTs like you would recognize in any of the peer-reviewed journals. All of them show efficacy. All of them show high efficacy, as a matter of fact. And all of them show it holds up over time. And so that's really great. And there's even 3 meta-studies out there that take all of that, which is a real way to bump your numbers way down, right? Is to have a meta-study on them. But again, if you think of the idea of psychology having maybe, let's call it, more than 300 modalities out there right now, almost none of them have any of that research. None of them. But we still practice them and find value. Absolutely. And I just think it's kind of cool that we even have a replication study. That doesn't get done often. Why? Because mostly replication studies don't work out so well.
Like, never mind.
Yeah,
We'll just
let's
move
not
on.
do that.
Well,
Moving on.
even the clinical trials, what really impressed me initially was the self-reported clinical insights that were coming through from around the world. And I think it was Brazil, maybe, that was one of the ones that I was hearing a lot about, or I'm not sure, I can't remember
Well,
now
there's
where
an
it
awful
was.
lot now that's coming through Australia through Bond University because we
Oh,
have a big
right.
tapper, Peter Stapleton, who is the most prolific current field trial researcher, and she's a professor, a sitting professor there, and she frankly has the money and the staff to do it. So, woohoo! But in general, I mean, I was one of those researchers on some of the original studies and the replication study, and
Wow.
so that's a really interesting place to be, to see this in action and see all the problems with it and whatever. But again and again, I say research is great. We need it. We embrace it. We like it because there are certain people who value taking things in on that level, and they can't get past it unless you supply this gateway.
But
And
doesn't that
so,
work for us as well? I mean, those of us that are really deeply embedded in the intuitive, qualitative, experiential, we say, well, I can see what it is, even if I couldn't quantify it. It's still nice to see these
mhm,
results for any of us.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I say we need it. It's nice
Mm,
to have. It's not where I live
mm,
because I'm a proof in the pudding kind of person.
yeah,
And once people like yourself and myself that have worked for a long time in it, well, we have our data, really,
yeah.
right? But that doesn't mean that we would like to be consigned to the person who goes, well, I don't know about your data. I don't know if you were a good data person because you're saying, trust me.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that's in short supply right now. So it's good to know
Yeah.
that there is a body of research that does meet those requirements, that is in peer-reviewed journals, that for people to feel confident that this is not just something you made up in California today. Okay, good. There's something there, and now we can move on, because almost all of the people that want to talk about that, I see very quickly their eyes roll back in their head when you really start talking about it. All they really wanted is it there? Is
Mm-hmm.
it good? Does it hold up? Okay, good. Moving on. That's all they want to know.
Yeah.
And fair enough.
Equally right are
Mhm.
the clients who come in and mostly disbelieving. It reminds me of a quote by Carl Jung when somebody asked him if he really believed in all this stuff he was writing about, and dreams and metaphor and mythology and going into other worlds and that sort of thing. And he looked really perplexed, and he said, it's a very strange question to ask me, do I believe in this? He says, I think I don't believe in anything. I have experiences. And
Mhm.
there's something about this EFT, the what I find so powerful about it is there is this instant induction, as we talk about in hypnotherapy, this induction, it draws you in, it's hypnotizing, it's mesmerizing, where one moment they come in and they say, I am on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 10 depressed.
Mhm.
I'm looking at all these different things I'm going to do, take medication, all these different things. And at the end of the session, maybe 10, 15 minutes later,
Mhm.
I say, okay, now scale rate it, qualify
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
And you could see the eyes searching for it as if they've lost it somewhere. And this cognitive dissonance, like, well, where did it go? And that was always my big go-to at that point. I said, okay, where did it go? Where did your depression go?
Right. It's almost like a parlor trick for some of them. You're fooling me, you're hiding it, something. Because it's gobsmackery. I
Well,
have no idea.
I think it's a big question, and it's a serious question. Where did it go?
Mhm.
Something that was drowning a person, something that was destroying their life, can, in a moment, at least for that moment, and it seems to have longevity, but yet in that moment it recedes, and all of a sudden this return to their true nature arises. And I say, okay, so you have this question, where did it go? The other question I would ask, what does it say about you and your power that you did this? You did this, not I, not through investigating your childhood, not through analysis. What does it say about your ability to transform yourself and our body's ability to facilitate this coherent coming into truing ourselves, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Well, these are all great questions, by the way. I think. So the first thing that popped into my mind was, as they say in A Course of Miracles, in this holy moment, right? There is a timelessness to, in that holy moment, something has happened. Something miraculous has happened. Something unexplainable has happened.
Yeah.
And I honor that place of wonder. But I also think that I'm always going to be trying to use my language skills to meet them where they are in talking their language, I guess, being on the same page with them. So one of the things that I'm going to ask is your sense of things what changed? We have these little tiny things inside our head called insula that are bringing in all this information from the body and making sense of it. I don't know how they do that. It's like Google fish in our ears or something. But this is what I think that I'm trying to get them to express their own experience of that. Instead of me tell them, how do I know? I know that we can talk about probably 5 different possible mechanisms by which EFT is working. But I also know that we don't actually understand aspirin, but we sure do use it. Okay? So what I'm really interested in is helping them to define their own experience to their satisfaction. Right? I could say anything, and if it doesn't land with you or you don't resonate with it or you don't understand it, I'm in the same place I was a minute ago.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for them to make sense of it, and I think that that's a really conversational place to be. Is your sense of it different in this moment? Is that what you're telling me? And if so, could you tell me more about it as you investigate that, as you describe that? We are putting words to their new experience for them.
Does that help embed this energetic expression that is maybe too much, especially in its newness, to be able to grok or understand, to help them form language to anchor it?
Grok is the perfect word. I wish more people knew grok.
Love that word.
I do too. It's perfect. But I do think that it's just like when we are a child and we're seeking to know why something is, we're going to stop at the first likely explanation. Doesn't make it true. It's just the first likely explanation, and then we're off to something else.
Good enough.
Good enough. And we carry forward that belief system, that meaning, that contextual conclusion that we made until somebody asks us directly, or we have a chance to investigate that again. Is that really true? I don't know that that's really true. And so this is, I think, much the same as we're inviting them to look into that sense that they have and make a conclusion that actually fits their experience in the moment, though. It's not a conclusion that's happening to a child on their own as they stumble through life. I don't know, I guess it's this. We are in that moment. We are connected and trained. We are together in this present moment, and we're trying to help them give their experience meaning and words and explanation that actually seems right to them. And in this case, unlike a child on their own, we can talk about it, shape that understanding so that it really lands with them. You know, we have this thing called apex effect, which is hilarious because it's when I can't build a bridge to what just happened, I'll make something up. This is what we're talking about. I have had people make amazing transitions in a moment and they go, you know, I think all that yoga is beginning to pay off. It's just, you have to hold a space for that because all they really said to you was, I can't make a bridge over there. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's all that talk therapy. I've done a lot of work on this. And I say, maybe so.
So you're facilitating that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Creating a transformational opportunity.
Beautiful.
Then
That's a
helping them
really
to bring
nice
it
way to
around.
say that. Absolutely. I think we're helping them make sense of their world now because it has changed. And if they can land with that, keep that, feel comfortable with that, expand upon that, then they will continue the change, will continue acting on the change. If they can't, we just have that window and it may shut back down and go right back to that autopilot belief system or conclusion because it's not sustained.
And is
Right?
that part of the reason why they say, give a 1 to 10 scale rating and then give a name for it? Because these are very left brain anchors that then we can come back to and say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, your depression was a 10. And when we're done, thesis and antithesis is now it's a 0.
Yes.
The synthesis is really the middle. Like, what does that mean? Where is it? What is it? And helping them to get their head around what just happened.
Absolutely, because it helps a lot in that process you just mentioned. I use this a lot in a group where they write down some kind of benchmark that we start with, and then they write down where it is now, and then they write down. So they are tabulating their own evidence there, and it's right in front of them.
In their words.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Very powerful.
Absolutely. It is very powerful, I think. And in that moment, they are able to sort of build that bridge to this new place. And so I think that it's not precisely EFT, but it's facilitating great EFT that we ask them for those insights. So it's not just 0 to 10, but it's sort of like, okay, it was a 10 and now it's a 4. And that's been about 7 minutes. Okay, that was very fast. You acknowledge what is happening, right? That was very fast. Let me ask you, what is your sense of it now? Mm-hmm. And so we're helping them build this bridge of transformation that they can hold on to, right?
Absolutely. Now, you, as many of the people that will be listening, I'm assuming, and I'm sure I'm correct on this, are practitioners, are wanting to get into the field. So they're looking to understand what is your process, really looking EFT itself. And for those of you listening, check out Jondi Whitis' web pages, and we'll put all that on the link to get to you. And you're doing trainings, you're ramping up a new movement, right, of a new calling. And the Fire 1 question, the Fire 2 is really the creative process and some of the challenges you've had. The Fire 1 part of it is you and your process through this, from where you were to where you are. As you can imagine, somebody coming in maybe new to this, and where you've gotten to. If you could say in a sort of a concise way, it's really fun operation, right? What is the big change that you went through? If you were to tell your past self as this future self now, what to know about the path ahead?
About the path ahead.
To where you are now.
Well, putting yourself back in the beginner seat and the Shoshan kind of seat of that, I think is a practice that we all want to keep doing, right? Keep coming to that beginner's mind afresh because there's always something to learn there. Number 2, I would say I learned this mechanically because at the time, that's all I could probably handle of that is mechanically, here's a tiny little algorithm that mechanically applied has almost an 80 percentile change rate, positive change rate. Who doesn't want that?
Fail-proof.
Yeah, and it's fast. And, it can be very inexpensive because it's so fast. I'm like, who doesn't want that? Right. But in so doing it, you and I both started out with Gary Craig on tapes.
That's right.
Right? Thank God they weren't 8 tracks, but still.
Close.
Close. But his facilitation of it was anything but mechanical, which is why it was actually so hard to learn, because Gary was such a practiced NLP master and
Aha.
it spent a fortune on everybody who was good about human empowerment and human development, personal development kind of area. So he had just massive pieces of information we didn't have. So our little algorithm was like, well, 0 to 10, is it better? You know, it was so hard, but that's actually all that's required of us in the beginning, is the idea, here's a little piece of mechanism that might be really helpful for you. Would you like to try it? I'll teach you how to do that. You can practice with it yourself and see what you think. It's a perfectly valid place to be.
Absolutely. What would you say to someone that feels this insecurity around that, not having done, you know, I hear students that are initially coming to me saying, you know, I'm really sad that I didn't, you know, get a master's degree in psychology, or I didn't do this or do that, because I don't feel that I have what it takes to be a healing presence with another. What would you, and that's it's so powerful, because that's a sign of a real healer, as someone that has that level of concern. But yet, those of us who know something quite different, right?
Well, that's true. And, you know, frankly, here you are talking about me. I have had, and I do have those moments where I go, what was wrong with me? I just didn't hang out with the program long enough to get the master's in that. This would have made everything so much easier. I don't know what was wrong with me.
Maybe.
It wasn't my path.
No.
And, you know, I had to get over my big bad self and all that self-doubt, because it was actually kind of a form of procrastination, perhaps. Another form of fear. You know, what if they don't like me, accept me? What if it doesn't work? What if they won't let me in the boys club because I don't have the shingle? Well, all those things happen, and I apparently am still alive. So I'm very empathetic about those people. And I just say, can we talk about this? There's a mechanistic form that is beautiful, elegant form of structure that you can hang your reality and your client's reality on. It's going to be really helpful to you. You don't need any of that other stuff. If you don't have it, you can still learn it, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying we're not having a value conversation about that. We're having this conversation about EFT. And that's what I think they need to focus on, because I can't really speak to all their what ifs and I wish I had and all that. In that moment, that's really not where we're going. I'm answering their question. But I go forward and I say, perhaps like to a lot of therapists who go, this is just never ending what you can learn about this little thing. I think I'm done and I get it. And then another plateau and vista opens up to me of capability in this thing. And I say, yeah, welcome to evolution. You know, this is what we're all up to.
Yeah.
That's the good news.
The nature of energy.
The nature of energy, and how to understand it better and use it better every day, for your sake, for everybody else's sake, every day.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered that question or not, but I just don't think it's as important as they might make it to be, even though here we are back at convenience again. Yeah, it's really convenient if they let you in the door because you have the magic password.
Yeah, no one ever asked for that, by the way.
Oh, good.
Now, my teacher, Luwada, when I was, 21, and I was contemplating graduate school in clinical psychology and the rest, and she said, Kelly, there's one truth. There is you and the person across from you. And the third being the relationship. And that's what you show up for. And everything comes through that. And she said to me, and it's something I've used every moment with every client for 30 something years, is I quietly and silently say to myself, as soon as I sit with them, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know what they need. I don't know what to do. But I know if I sit here with this, something will come through there. And this also gets into the fire realm of intuition, to be intuitive is to be present and have those mirror neuron synapsing and to have that empathy gene firing and all those wonderful things that make that qualitative expression. And EFT will hold the field for you structurally, correct? So
Absolutely.
I would suggest to those that are interested and having those fears and concerns, as you said early on, those very egoic concerns, that the fire is so capable of burning away. And what I love about alchemy, they say, there is this fire in us, right, that inspires us, that illuminates a path ahead if you can shine it out, and it shows you what's possible. It's so future oriented, but yet it knows that we are impure vessels nonetheless, but it's okay with that because we're willing enough, and it knows that in the process it will refine us. It'll burn away the impurities of ego, desire, and fantasy. Eventually we go through this arcing dynamic and to get to that final stage of fire, which is spiritual wisdom. This is something we can put our faith in, we can create ritual around, that we can grow from.
It's true.
So for you, in terms of the creativity part of it, identifying yourself with EFT and the broader context of what EFT can offer, and you can offer EFT, there is this creative aspect, the expression of it for you. The middle part of it is bringing it out to the world and going from being a student to becoming a practitioner, to becoming a trainer, a mentor, and the rest. What are some of the models that you would point to that come to mind as key for you?
I'm gonna ask you to just rephrase it a little bit for me so I answer in the right context. What model are you specifically kind of referring to?
Did you have mentors? Did you watch Gary Craig and say, I love the way he presents, I like this about it, I can take that element, he's got the NLP, maybe I'll go train in NLP. But there's other people that maybe I've trained with that really personify a spirit of it that speaks more to who I'm becoming. Not quite, but closer.
Right. Well, I do think very much it was a knowledge first, mentoring second kind of thing. And I follow that. I pay that version forward.
It's important.
So before I got to Gary, I started out in applied kinesiology, which is an amazing kind of thing. I studied muscle testing about how to listen to one's body. I found Brain Gym, which was just way beyond its time in terms of helping children sort of get all their pieces together in synthesis. I guess there's a better way to say that, but that's what came out of my mouth right now.
Brain Gym, like GYM or GEM?
Correct. It's by a husband and wife team in California, maybe in the 70s, called the Dennisons. And from all those things, when I finally encountered Gary, it was almost like that fire you're talking about had burned off everything that wasn't mine to do in that moment. It was like this thing. That's what was left. And I went, this is great. And then watching Gary was knowledge-based, I thought, but in truth, it was not. I was actually emulating him. And I'd spent 2 years trying to be him before I realized that job was taken and really well, and that was never going to happen. And I was never meant to be Gary. Thank goodness. That I figured out that I'm supposed to embody this through me. And it's not like Gary didn't say it a million times, let it come through you, not by you, because that was like the ego statement, right? Let it come through you, not by you, removes all that. And so, I didn't have to work hard at figuring out that, I'm supposed to take that in and then run it through me, and then it's supposed to come back out Jondi style. Got it. Took a while, I'm a slow learner apparently. But when I did, that's when I realized, oh my gosh, all the things I know in EP, all the different things I've studied or certified in, all of these things are what I now call sort of creative tapping techniques, because they're not all EFT, but EFT is sort of the heart of the thing for me because of its vast simplicity and flexibility and its ability just to go to the heart of the matter. So I use all these things, but it is very much in the mentoring model. So what I do is we have a knowledge model, then we have a mentoring model, then we have an interactive practicing model. And those things go back and forth, up and down the scale all the time, because it is a stair-stepped kind of learning process that needs all three of those things, I believe, in order to develop practical excellence around this. And practical excellence to me is maybe a left brain results oriented place, but I'm a very right brained, heart centered kind of person. So for me, it's like, I felt that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes, that was practical excellence because it's been sort of all scooped up and run through my system and theirs, this presence and this space that we have together. We are weaving this moment, this healing intention. So all of that comes up. And, for me, I know that we've talked about ego and things like that before, but for me, that's one of the ways that it's so easy to keep it at bay is to realize it's just all in service of this mutual intention that we have set together.
Wow. Yeah. This is what you teach.
This is what I teach.
Wow. Tell me about what's coming through now, the new future of your work. Because this gets into the play and creativity and children.
It does. Well, I'm revising my trainer of trainer programs because I want this work to go out to more people. And I think I'm finally at a place now where I'm able to really train good trainers to do that. Wow. It's a very different skill set, though, than practitioner skill set. It's just, they're different, right? As far as the practitioner work and where I'm taking my interest, it's very much in play realm, very much in creative realm, because I'm returning to my passion about bringing this to children. It's not just word service that I go, if you want to change the world, then you need to help the children find out how to take care of themselves, find out how they're built, find out what emotions are, develop emotional acuity and wisdom. We need to do that, and it's going to probably go bottom up, because right now, top down's not working so well, so bottom up. And the children, I think, are the energy of fire, creativity, play, and they are so very open. That's the good news and the bad news, is they're so very open. So encountering, roughly 50,000 ad impressions per day, wow. I want to balance that with putting things in there that are of value for them to know who they are, to develop a sense of self that is more wise, I guess is a good word to come up with. And I don't know that you teach wise, but I think you can inculcate this idea of curiosity and discovery, which is the play, fire, energy in them. When you have a child who is frustrated because they know that they are always in trouble, they typically don't know that I have a self-regulation problem. I am rather frustrated by my repetitive self-regulation problem. That's not what's going on. All I know is I can't seem to get past this, right?
Yeah.
And when they are able to let you in, because it is a privilege to be invited in, when they will let you in and you can explain to them that that thing is a signal for them. It's trying to give them useful information that is going to help them do whatever it is they want to do. Maybe came to do is too likely a lofty a concept right now, but it's going to help you. And this is you trying to help yourself. Can I show you what I mean? Can I talk to you about what that is? Because I think if you understood what I just found out about how we're built, it's going to rock your world, and it's going to help you in ways I can't even begin to describe.
Wow.
You are going to be the judge of that. And so in that way, we start putting them in the driver's seat again, right, of their self. We also encourage them to start discovering who they are, not who they should be,
Mm-hmm.
who you are, what's uniquely yours, what is good or special about you. And I say that without a trace of Pollyanna, right? Every single child has something uniquely wonderful about them, but that is not the message they get.
No.
So it's time to counter that with this. And so I'm very passionate about that right now. That's where I'm going.
Wow. It reminds me of a very powerful experience my wife and I had recently at the movies to see Mr. Rogers and his message, and it extraordinarily powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And this message is powerful in itself, but to teach not just technique, but it sounds like you're teaching ritual. You're teaching how to see yourself in life and how to bring this as a routine.
How to be with yourself.
To see this as a, how did you put it? To see this as a signal or an indication.
Yes, these strong sensations that we tall people have labeled emotions or moods even, these are all signaling information systems that are signaling you with valuable information.
Signals.
So it's almost like you're giving them a decoder ring. See, that's how old I am. We used to get decoder rings.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Peter Gabriel has a song called Signal to Noise. And it's looking at that signal to noise ratio. and his whole thing was to turn up the signal to wipe out the noise. That's a beautiful, and what an energetic expression that is. That changes the emotional body, the sensory body, and the thinking body.
It does. And it also confers value.
How so?
I don't think a lot of children are getting the message of value that is internally generated, right? And maybe they're getting it from their parents. You know, let's say a superlative parent. I'm not a superlative parent, I'm sure. I'm just talking about some better parent, right? Is maybe saying, you are unique and wonderful to me. I treasure you.
Yeah.
And you're always, always so surprising to me and worth my time and attention. So, of course, we're probably not going to talk to our child this way. But if you're in New York City like I am and you're riding the subway, you're seeing all day long that 1 in 100 parents are doing this to their child who's desperately trying to connect. The other 99 are telling you that you are of no value. You are less value than my phone, my Candy Crush, my bad mood, my need to eat this donut. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. It's not about that. It's about the fact that you have this limited window in which to teach this human about what is wonderful about them, how to navigate the world, what the world might be like and what it's for, what they're allowed to do, think, all these things. We have a very limited window.
It's a big challenge you're pointing out, both this, the over Hawkeye, if you will, and the absent, the distracted. Both of them are extremes that we see all the time. And I confess that I have a 6 and a 9-year-old. I too go through those phases, although at this age I'm very aware of that and very attentive to it. But this seems like that you're looking at this as an offering, as an elixir or a salve for that.
I do think it's a way to manage it. It's something to hang on. Again, we come back to the structure as something to hang other things on. Okay, so the mechanics are there for you, but it doesn't do you any good if your child's problem is not being able to articulate that I feel worthless and valueless. That's probably not in their word schema. And you're probably not thinking that they feel that way. They look fine. Seem like they're fine. So I'm not trying to make problems where there's no problems. I'm saying on some kind of meta level, I really think that they are being bombarded by a lot of devaluing, because we're not conscious of the fact that we need to create a kind of valuing that is informational as well as emotional, right? As well as spiritual. And I don't necessarily mean religious. People have their own views on religion, but spiritually, I would just say it's about at a soul level, understanding your child is not you.
Yeah, it's a big statement. And they're not living your past. They're not going to be living into it either. They're
Not
living
unless you
into a different
consign
world.
them to that, and then you teach them how to do that, and that
Loop
they
them
are,
in.
and they're only valued if they do that.
So when you bring this work in, you see the problem there, the solution as you see it, the opportunity there for them is you augment their experience. If you can use that term, you give them a way of the transformational opportunity is for them.
Well, I think if it's the kids, you to kids, not you to parents and then to kids or something like that, but you to kids, you're looking for the opportunity to show them something cool.
To wow them.
In a way, but it is helping them. It is not icky helping them, but it is, let me show you something. Or I learned something cool. Or, man, I bet that hurts. Here's what I do. I mean, I have that very conversational desire to be just gently agenda-less, because hey, all those tall people, they have agendas. That would be me too. So I have to set the agenda down at the door like a suitcase.
Wow.
And they don't usually trust it because kids live in a double bind. You better tell me, and don't you tell, right? It's a highly inconvenient bind that they have. So they're used to trickery.
They're used to trickery.
They're used to trickery. And I'm not saying it's deliberate. I'm just saying it is, right? It just is.
It's a product of their life, product of having parents and teachers. And
it is. When I am privileged enough to be able to work with a child and they have something going on and I show them how we might use EFT techniques, I don't necessarily call it that. Who cares? They don't care. No. They just want to feel better than this, right?
Yeah.
And so when I tell them that there's a way to do that without them actually having to tell me, and would that be okay? You have their attention. And of course, you've got all their suspicion up, because that's just another tall person trick. I know it. I see it coming, right? They smell you. But when you don't, when you help them, you show them, they experience it. They show you that something is changed now. Almost all of them go, well, did you want me to tell you? It's so sweet. And I always revel in this toolbox that I have been taught now, where I go, well, if you feel like you need to and it would make you feel better, if you want to, I will certainly listen. But no, I'm not asking you to tell me. Now, don't everybody get excited. Not every situation is like that. Sometimes we're going to have to talk about the stuff. It depends on the context. Who are you? Who are they? What's the context of what you're working on? But just in general, consider the magic of that. No, I give you the privilege of privacy to do with as you will.
Because it's not based in linguistics in that sense. It's based in energy.
It's true. And it's, again, valuing the fact that you own your privacy.
Wow.
Right? That's hard for them to learn, because everything, hyperbolic. Lots of things in their life tell them that's not true.
Well, we're an analytical society, correct? We come to know the world. I think, therefore I am, sort of thing, where we are constantly analyzing each other rather than dropping down. And the first thing I was taught doing the work is to drop down into the heart, to come from this place, getting out of the head. And as and my teacher Lawada taught me that when I was younger, and just that shift at first seemed goofy, but then when I did it, all of a sudden I was experiencing the world from a different place.
And you were. And you
Yeah.
are. I think that's true.
Yeah. So the generations before them, parents, including us and grandparents, all the rest, come from a place of being in the head, being analytical, being diagnostic, where this is saying that's not the center of this. This is about coming from the heart, being present with it, holding space for it.
It is, and putting that on an equal footing with our cognition and our somatic information. I mean, EFT to me is still very much a pyramid, 3 points.
Yeah.
And that is body and mind, and then the emotion or sensory senses that we get that are lodged in the limbic system. So I just call it body and mind and emotion as a 3-point information system. That is your legacy. That is your biological legacy.
Yeah.
And so when we get in touch with that, I do think that it is a way to experience the world differently, because our family, no doubt, were told how much we value learning, which meant, thinking, which meant the other two are not as important, perhaps.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, putting that balance back into play, or first of all, just the awareness and then the balance, I think is a huge thing that we're doing for kids, no matter what you're teaching them. It doesn't have to be EFT.
It doesn't have to. Jondi, can you give those listening or viewing some ways of connecting with you?
Oh, sure. I would be delighted. You can reach me by email, which is Jondi, and my name is actually just Jondi, Jondi, no fancy spelling, Jondi at EFT, and the number 4, and then results, because that's what we want, right? We're Americans.
We like results.
That's it, Jondi at EFTforresults.com. And of course, that is a website, EFTforresults.com. I think that is probably universally the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I would be delighted to talk to you about any level of this, whether you're just curious or you're looking for training, professional training, or you would like to become a practitioner based on what you've heard.
Great. Well, thank you for this amazing interview. I love talking with you. And so it just gives me another opportunity to do so. Now, we are going to, as we talked about, do a little bit deeper dive in the part 2 of this. That'll be on the Patreon page, patreon.com/Soullab. We will go deeper into it, and we can talk a bit more about the elements of your experience. And so much of it came through here, but just again, another excuse to talk with you.
I would be delighted, and I hope everybody that's interested in these kind of subjects will join us there, because a deep dive is really where we're all trying to go, of the things that call to us, right?
Absolutely. So can I ask you I have 3 words that I wanted to get an insight from you on, just to get a little bit of a sense from your perspective. Yeah.
For a wordsmith, that's really hard, but okay.
I'm excited. I made this up thinking about our interview today, saying, I wonder if I asked her this, what would she say? So the first one would be, if you could give me one word explanation or one sentence explanation of the term life.
Irrepressible. Wow. Didn't see that one coming. I didn't.
Isn't that the beauty of it?
Yes.
Wow, irrepressible.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's true.
That.
I do too. How interesting you can find me to one word.
I know, it does something, doesn't it? And I will be going up and looking up all the different definitions of that word, irrepressible. So the next one would be a one-word response to the word ego.
Harnessed.
Ooh. You are an energy woman.
Well, it's pretty easy when I'm talking to an energy man. So.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for that. Oh, that's golden. Okay, the final one, a very dear word, in this, especially in this context. A one-word response to the word soul.
Two words came to mind, but the first one that came to mind is seeker. And the second word that came to mind was eternal. But I'm telling you both in an order.
Eternal seeker, seeker eternal. Wow. What a delight. Thank you so much. I can't wait to talk with you more. And everyone, please check out Jondi Whitis. What is your website? Did you put that? You gave your email address, or did you give your website?
Well, the website is similar. It is EFT4results.com.
Got it. Good. Thank you so much, and I look forward to talking with you more. And you're in the Soullab group, so folks can find you in the Soullab group as well, correct?
Perfect. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you have an amazing weekend, and hopefully the weather will hold up.
Well, I appreciate that. And so I know that we're stopping the record function so that I can wish you well. And we're just going to say to those of you who are listening, I hope to see you on Patreon.
Thank you, everyone.